Beside me, I have a Ryzen 2600X and an Intel i5 9600K. Both of these are interesting chips, especially considering that they're both 6-core, although the Ryzen is 12-thread, and they have fairly similar clock speeds, including all-core boosts. Now, I've done a full video on comparing these two CPUs in both normal gaming and in productivity benchmarks, so if you want to check out that video, go take a look. It's in the cards or on the end cards at the end of the video. But overall, these are some fairly similarly kind of equipped chips. Obviously, the 9600K is a good bit more expensive, but it should be interesting to see how well they perform in streaming and gaming. Now, if you've not seen one of these videos from me before, I do a kind of brief explanation of how we test stuff and what we're testing, and then I go through the performance results, so for you the streamer, and then the end video quality result as well for your viewers. Now, if you want to skip the explanation of how we test this stuff and just look at the performance and the video quality, I'll leave timestamps over here for you, but to jump into how we test stuff, we use OBS, capturing either the screen or the game, depending on which one works, as I've had trouble with either, and then we're using 1080p 60 FPS, we're using a 6000 kilobits per second bitrate to stream to Twitch, as well as a separate encoder for the indistinguishable file quality for a local recording. Now, this is definitely a fairly sort of torture test scenario, but a lot of people who like to stream also like to have a local recording of their stream so they can go straight to editing it and then uploading sort of montage plays and stuff for YouTube. So if you're interested in doing that, this is a fairly apt test for you. Now, in terms of the graphics card, I'm using an RTX 2080, actually the Strix one in this case, to test, and they're both using the same RAM and very similar motherboards. They're both Strix kind of F-level motherboards, so either way, this is a fairly comparable setup. In terms of the games that we're testing, we're running at 1080p with Csgo on very high settings, or actually kind of max settings. We're running PUBG on Ultra and Fortnite on Epic settings as well, to really see what the games can kind of do visually, but also to give you an idea of performance. So speaking of performance, let's give you a quick rundown of what the graphs look like. So first of all, we've got the game at the top and then the graphics card we're using, and then we have which type of results, so average, 5% minimum, or 95% maximum. Effectively, those are just the, obviously average is the average frame rate, and that's the one that you're probably most interested in, but then 5% minimum is 5% of the time how slow is the game running, and then 95% of the time, or 5% maximum, how fast is the game running, to give you a bit more sort of averaged or more kind of realistic minimums and maximums, because sometimes games can just randomly have frame drops, but overall it's still a generally, you know, kind of smooth playable experience. You don't notice one frame missing. We then have the graphs down the bottom, so you have the stock number, so not streaming, you then have the streamed number, and then the difference, and then the difference in a percentage format, so you can see how much kind of FPS you're losing in any given category. With that said, let's take a look at the numbers themselves. Starting with Csgo, the averages show that the 9600K is a little bit faster here. We're looking at 35% performance loss rather than 49%, which is pretty impressive if this were all that was to be said, but we're going to talk a lot more about the kind of details of this in a second. In terms of minimums, we're looking at 46 to 58, so very similar to the averages, and then the maximums, you're looking at 21% loss versus 32% for the 2600X, so generally speaking in favor of the Intel chip here. In terms of battlegrounds, again, you're looking at a 21% versus 38% loss here, so again, it looks anyway like the 9600K is doing a really good job, and I kind of stress the looks here. Again, we'll talk about all this in a second, but in terms of the performance losses, we do actually see a bigger loss on minimums with PUBG, but back to maximums, you're looking at 22 versus 40% losses for the 2600X, and then in Fortnite, again, we're looking at a very similar result. In fact, actually a very surprising result with only 9% performance loss for the 9600K versus 34%, which is kind of what you'd expect with, you know, streaming, especially the setup that I'm running. Minimums are the same, and then maximums, it's going to show 0, but it's actually a minus, I think, 3 or 4%. It's technically faster while streaming, which is definitely surprising to see. So you may be looking at those numbers and going, wow, the 9600K is a killer CPU for streaming and gaming. I'm going to pick one up right now. Hold on, just 2 seconds, let me tell this next bit, and then maybe reconsider your kind of decision there. So first of all, the kind of FPS results do not lie, at least as far as I can tell. The 9600K lost a significantly less amount of performance than the Ryzen 2600, but there's a small caveat to this. Let me just show you, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, let me show you a clip from each of the 3 games from the 9600K. Now let me show you some clips from the 2600X, and I think you can probably see the difference. So as you can see, the 9600K seemed to really just focus on playing the game really well rather than, you know, actually doing the stream part really well. And I have to say that even while watching the stream while doing my testing, it was effectively the exact same thing. So you can imagine that the video you just saw for how well the 9600K does for actually producing a video file is also what your viewers would see. So not exactly recommended. Now, I've done a video on comparing the CPU to NVENC, especially the new NVENC on the RTX cards, and I've got to say that I highly recommend that. So overall, I think this is a little bit of an asterisk test anyway, and I think you should probably just go with whichever you fancy and whichever you feel is a better value for money for you. But overall, if you're really interested in just x.264 streaming and you want to know which is best, then technically speaking, it's the Ryzen, because realistically, I don't really count the 9600K is actually doing a stream at the same time as gaming there, so yeah. Either way though, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Are either of these chips ones that you're going to be picking up, or do you already have them? Have you tried streaming and gaming, or is it something that you're aspiring to do? Let me know down there. I would definitely love to hear from you. Of course, if you do want to pick up either of these CPUs or just check out pricing when and where you watch this, take a look at the 2 links in the description down below. You can also check out, as I said, the comparison video where I do not only gaming but also productivity benchmarks. So if you want to see that, feel free to take a look at the cards or in the end cards as well. And otherwise, of course, if you're new to the channel, then make sure you hit that subscribe button for more videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. I've still got plenty more streaming videos to do, including the 9900K versus 2700X actually. So feel free to make sure you subscribe to the notifications for that one. And otherwise, you can check out the rest of the links down there too. You can check out the Amazon and Overclockers UK affiliate links, which massively help me out but are free for you to use. You can also check out private internet access, which is a great and cheap VPN, Humble Bundle, which is a great place to get cheap games, and otherwise that is kind of it really. As I said, feel free to take a look at the other videos over there, and otherwise, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, and we'll see you all in the next video.